When it was the fourth night, Dunyazad asked her to finish the story, if she was not sleepy, and so she went on. I have heard, O fortunate king, that when the fisherman told the Ifrit that he would not believe him until he saw this with his own eyes, a shudder ran through the Ifrit, and he became a cloud of smoke hovering over the sea. Then the smoke coalesced and entered the jar bit by bit until it was all there. Quickly the fisherman picked up the brass stopper with its inscription and put it over the mouth of the bottle. He called out to the Ifrit, "Ask me how you want to die. By God, I am going to throw you into the sea and then build myself a house in this place so that I can stop anyone who comes fishing by telling them that there is an Ifrit here who gives anyone who brings him up a choice of how he wants to be killed." When the Ifrit heard this and found himself imprisoned in the bottle, he tried to get out but could not, as he was prevented by Solomon's seal, and he realized that the fisherman had tricked him. "I was only joking," he told the fisherman, who replied, "You are lying, you most despicable, foulest and most insignificant of Ifrits," and he took up the bottle. "No, no," called the Ifrit, but the fisherman said yes, yes, at which the Ifrit asked him mildly and humbly what he intended to do with him. "I am going to throw you into the sea," the fisherman told him. "You may have been there for 1800 years, but I shall see to it that you stay there until the last trump. Didn't I say? Spare me, may God spare you, and do not kill me lest God place you in the power of one who will kill you. But you refused and acted treacherously towards me. Now God has put you in my power, and I shall do the same to you. Open the bottle," implored the Ifrit, "so that I can do you good." "Damned liar," said the fisherman. "You and I are like the vizier of King Yunan and Duban the sage." "What is their story?" asked Ifrit, and the fisherman replied. "You must know, Ifrit, that once upon a time in the old days in the land of Ruman there was a king called Yunan in the city of Fars. He was a wealthy and dignified man with troops and guards of all races, but he was also a leper, who had taken medicines of various kinds and used ointments, but whose illness doctors and men of learning had been unable to cure. There was an elderly physician known as Duban the sage, who had studied the books of the Greeks, the Persians, the Arabs and the Syrians. He was a master of medicine and of astronomy and was conversant with the fundamental principles of his subject, with a knowledge of what was useful and what was harmful. He knew the herbs and plants that were hurtful and those that were helpful, as well as having a mastery of philosophy, together with all branches of medicine and other sciences. When this man arrived at the city, within a few days he had heard that the king was suffering from leprosy, and that no doctor or man of learning had been able to cure him. He spent the night thinking over the problem, and when dawn broke he put on his most splendid clothes and went to the king, kissing the ground before him and calling eloquently for the continuance of his glory and good fortune. After introducing himself, he went on, "I have heard, Your Majesty, of the disease that has afflicted you and that, although you have been treated by many doctors, they have been unable to remove it. I shall cure you without giving you any medicine to drink or applying any ointments." Yunan was amazed to hear what he had to say and asked how he was going to do that, promising to enrich him and his children's children. "I shall shower favors on you," he said, "and grant you all your wishes, taking you as a boon companion and a dear friend." He then presented Duban with a robe of honor and treated him with favor, before asking, "Are you really going to cure my leprosy without medicines or ointment?" Duban repeated that he would, and the astonished king asked when this would be, urging him to be quick. "To hear is to obey," replied Duban, promising to do this the very next day. Duban now went to the city, where he rented a house in which he deposited his books, his medicines and his drugs. He took some of the latter and placed them in a polo stick, for which he made a handle, and he used his skill to design a ball. The next day, after he had finished, he went into the presence of the king, kissed the ground before him, and told him to ride out to the polo ground and play a game. The king was accompanied by the emirs, chamberlains, viziers and officers of state, and before he had taken his seat on the ground, Duban came up to him and handed him the stick. "Take this," he said. "Hold it like this, and when you ride on to the field, hit the ball with a full swing until the palm of your hand begins to sweat, together with the rest of your body. The drug will then enter through your palm and spread through the rest of you. When you have finished and the drug has penetrated, go back to your palace, wash in the baths and then go to sleep, for you will have been cured. That is all. At that, the king took the stick from him and mounted, holding it in his hand. He threw the ball ahead of him and rode after it, hitting it as hard as he could when he caught up with it, and then following it up and hitting it again until the palm of his hand and the rest of his body became sweaty because of his grip on the stick. When Duban saw that the drug had penetrated into the king's body, he told him to go back to his palace and bathe immediately. The king went back straight away and ordered that the baths be cleared for him. This was done, and house boys and Mamluks hurried up to him and prepared clothes for him to wear. He then entered the baths, washed himself thoroughly and dressed before coming out, after which he rode back to his palace and fell asleep. So much for him, but as for Duban the sage, he returned to spend the night in his house, and in the morning he went to ask permission to see the king. On being allowed to enter, he went in, kissed the ground before him and addressed him with these verses which he chanted. Virtues are exalted when you are called their father, a title that none other may accept. The brightness shining from your face removes the gloom that shrouds each grave affair. This face of yours will never cease to gleam, although the face of time may frown. Your liberality has granted me the gifts that rain clouds shower down on the hills. Your generosity has destroyed your wealth, until you reached the heights at which you aimed. When Duban had finished these lines, the king stood up and embraced him, before seating him by his side and presenting him with splendid robes of honor. This was because when he had left the baths he had looked at his body and found it, to his great delight and relief, pure and silver white, showing no trace of leprosy. In the morning, he had gone to his court and taken his seat on his royal throne, the chamberlains and officers of state all standing up for him, and it was then that Duban had come in. The king had risen quickly for him, and after the sage had been seated by his side, splendid tables of food were set out, and he ate with the king, and kept him company for the rest of the day. The king then made him a present of 2,000 dinars, in addition to the robes of honor and other gifts, after which he mounted him on his own horse. Duban went back to his house, leaving the king filled with admiration for what he had done and saying, "This man treated me externally without using any ointment. By God, that is skill of a high order. He deserves gifts and favors, and I shall always treat him as a friend and companion." The king passed a happy night, gladdened by the soundness of his body and his freedom from disease. The next day, he went out and sat on his throne, while his state officials stood and the emirs and viziers took their seats on his right and his left. He asked for Duban, who entered and kissed the ground before him, at which the king got up, greeted him, seated him by his side and ate with him. He then presented him with more robes of honor as well as gifts, and talked with him until nightfall, when he gave him another 5 robes of honor together with 1,000 dinars, after which Duban went gratefully home. The next morning, the king came to his court, where he was surrounded by his emirs, viziers and chamberlains. Among the viziers was an ugly and ill-omened man, base, miserly and so envious that he was in love with envy. When this man saw that the king had taken Duban as an intimate, and had rewarded him with favors, he was jealous and planned to do him an injury. For, as the sayings have it, no one is free of envy, and injustice lurks in the soul, strength shows it, and weakness hides it. This vizier came up to King Yunnan, kissed the ground before him and said, "King of the age, I have grown up surrounded by your bounty, and I have some serious advice for you. Were I to conceal it from you, I would show myself to be a bastard, but if you tell me to give it to you, I shall do so." Yunnan was disturbed by this and said, "What is this advice of yours?" The vizier replied, "Great king, it was a saying of the ancients that time was no friend to those who did not look at the consequences of their actions. I have observed that your majesty has wrongly shown favor to an enemy who is looking to destroy your kingdom. You have treated this man with generosity and done him the greatest honor, taking him as an intimate, something that fills me with apprehension. Yunnan was uneasy. His color changed and he asked the vizier who he was talking about. If you are asleep, wake up, the vizier told him, and went on, I am talking about the sage Duban. Damn you! Exclaimed Yunnan. This is my friend and the dearest of people to me, for he cured me through something that I held in my hand from a disease that no other doctor could treat. His like is not to be found in this age or in this world, from west to east. You may accuse him, but today I am going to assign him pay and allowances, with a monthly income of 1,000 dinars, while even if I divided my kingdom with him, this would be too little. I think that it is envy that has made you say this, reminding me of the story of King Sinbad. Morning now dawned and Shahrazad broke off from what she had been allowed to say,